You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Number to call up as always is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. Yes! Yes! And I am I'm in this mood, ladies and gentlemen, for two reasons. Two reasons. Number one, the NBA playoffs are officially here. What a game last night with Minnesota and Denver. What a game. I mean, you're trying to play in, you're trying to get to the postseason, you're trying to make sure that you're in a 13-year drought if you're Minnesota, you're trying to make sure you make the postseason if you're Denver. That's how you play basketball. That's how you play basketball. That's one thing, that game. Number two, Russell Westbrook averaging a triple-double 2 consecutive years. First time in NBA history it's been done. Number three, the playoffs overall are officially on the way. The number 1 seed, Houston Rockets, will go up against the Minnesota Timberwolves. The number 1 seed, Toronto Raptors, will go up against the Washington Wizards. And in between, you'll see OKC against Utah. You'll see Golden State against San Antonio. You'll see Portland against New Orleans. You'll see Cleveland against Indiana. You'll see Philly and Miami. And you can discuss which series is best in your mind, which one you can't wait for. All of that stuff is stuff that we're going to talk about. And obviously, we're right here. This is the place for playoff basketball, y'all. The Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, time for Straight Talk. Brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. Forgive me, however, if that is not what's on my mind right now. Forgive me if what's on my mind right now. Ladies and gentlemen, I would ask you to indulge me and exercise just a touch of patience. I know NBA basketball is going on. You got the top 8 teams from each conference in the postseason. Usually it ain't the damn New York Knicks, which means at this time of the year, it's when they literally saunter into irrelevancy. But not today, because this is a key moment for the New York Knicks. Are you listening, James Dolan? Are you listening, President Steve Mills? This is a key day for the New York Knicks. It's key. It's your moment. It's your time. It's your time to grab it by the you-know-what and take it. This ain't a time to mess around. This ain't a time to sit up there and lollygag around this issue. It's a serious business. It's a serious. The New York Knicks, immediately following their season-ending victory over the Cleveland Cavaliers last night, as meaningless as it comes. LeBron James only played about 11 minutes, scored 10 points, wanted to continue his streak of scoring in double digits. That's what Tyronn Lue said. The second he got to 10 points, Tyronn Lue was going to take him out, and he was true to form. He kept his word. That's exactly what he did with LeBron James. Immediately after that game, probably once the team got back home, Jeff Hornacek was fired as the head coach of the New York Knicks. I want to state for the record, we wish Jeff Hornacek well. Jeff Hornacek is a good basketball mind. He's not a bad coach. Nobody's trying to say that the job that he did with the New York Knicks was so awful he doesn't deserve to be here. Nobody's trying to imply that he doesn't deserve to be a head coach in the National Basketball Association. Nobody would dare try to imply that. That is not what we're talking about here. What we are talking about here, ladies and gentlemen, what we are talking about, more so than anything else, is a new era. What we're talking about is the fact that this man, Jeff Hornacek, nor anybody else, almost no anybody else at this particular juncture, would be the right man for this job, because this is not just about basketball. This is about something more. Because the New York Knicks are so dormant, because they're so irrelevant, because they're so moribund, because they've been so disgusting for so many years. Jeff Hornacek had to go. Because what you need is not just a basketball coach. You need a homeboy. You need somebody from these streets. You need somebody that can walk the streets of New York. You need somebody that'll stand up and lives, eats, and breathes New York. You need somebody accustomed to the fog and the smog. You need somebody that's accustomed to the traffic jam. You need somebody that understands the pulse of this city, much like Magic Johnson did with the Los Angeles Lakers. Why you think it was such a great hire by Jeannie Buss? You don't just go and get anybody or let daddy's little boy take over and he making decisions while he's in Hooters bars. You don't do that. Jeannie Buss went out and she got Irvin Magic Johnson. Somebody who's proudly synonymous with L.A. Who lets you know by his mere presence that anything less than winning was unacceptable. And the pursuit of winning is priority number one. That's what the New York Knicks need. And they can have it. It's right there for the taking. All you got to do is hire Mark Jackson as your next head coach. Now, there are some people that say, come on, Stephen A. Come on, Stephen A. Mark Jackson's good, but come on now. Y'all are not understanding what I'm trying to say. This ain't just about basketball. This is about more than that. And let me count the ways. Let me break it down for you. You know, when you look at the New York Knicks and you see how pathetic this franchise became at one point, think about all the mechanisms they put in place that they attempted to exercise in order to get stuff out of their doldrums, and nothing worked. You know why nothing worked? Because James Dolan ain't that dude. No disrespect. It's just the truth. He's not that guy. And so what you have, what you need, think about the things that have happened. Think about the success that the Houston Rockets have had in bringing aboard Mike D'Antoni. Think about the success Golden State had in bringing aboard Steve Kerr. Think about the success that the Los Angeles Lakers have had, because they're better now and they're an upward swing. That's Magic Johnson. Think about the success Toronto has with Dwayne Casey. Yeah, in the Knicks case, it's a homeboy, but all of those guys that I mentioned, there's an ingredient to their success that can't be ignored. And that's the kind of stuff that we need to talk about today. We need to understand why things are the way that they are and why change needs to arrive. I'm telling you right now, since 1999-2000, when Jeff Van Gundy left, the New York Knicks have been an absolute joke. They've been a model. The only thing consistent about them is their pathetic tendencies. And they tried the Hail Mary. They went out and they got Phil Jackson because James Dolan begged him to come on board. And James Dolan begged him to come on board because James Dolan didn't want the Heat directed in his direction. But what did Phil Jackson do? He betrayed them. You can slice it any way you want to. And I say betray because there was a dereliction of duty. Obviously, none of us are getting younger. We all get older. So Phil Jackson falling asleep in practice while the team was practicing. I'm sure he didn't mean to do that. You're old. You're older, rather. Your health is not the greatest. Those kind of things happen. I'm not going to indict Phil Jackson for that. I'm not going to indict Phil Jackson for having bad hips. I'm not going to indict him for not being able to travel. But I can indict him for not being available, for leaving the spokesperson's role to Carmelo Anthony, a player, to not bringing aboard a coach that folks could trust and believe in. Derek Fisher's a nice guy, but he had no coaching experience. Jeff Hornacek had no business in New York. You had to make a change. You had to do something different. And all those teams that I mentioned, they did something different. And they did something that mirrored the kind of franchise that they wanted to have. It wasn't about them as individual owners. It wasn't about them as individual executives. It was about the city they represented and what they knew the city wanted and trying to deliver on that. That's what it was about. And that's why Mark Jackson has to be the next head coach of the New York Knicks. Notice I didn't say Doc Rivers, who I think is a damn good coach. And you certainly don't lose getting Doc Rivers. And he certainly can handle New York. But he's been in Orlando. He's been in Boston. He's been in L.A. So he is what he is, particularly when CP3, Jamal Crawford, and J.J. Redick all leave and Blake Griffin ends up getting traded and feeling unwanted. With DeAndre Jordan, in all likelihood, looking to get the hell out of the door himself, probably to head to Houston. So Doc Rivers might be the right coach in most places. Right now, not New York. What about David Fizdale, who just finished coaching in Memphis? Before they railroaded him, and they didn't do what they were supposed to do with him. What about that? Well, there's a simple explanation to that one. You know what it is? I think David Fizdale is going to be a great coach. If Luke Walton had messed up, I thought David Fizdale would be the next head coach for the Los Angeles Lakers. But New York's not the right place right now. You know why? Because why did he leave Memphis? He had management sticking their nose and stuff, not sharing his vision, not doing what he thought was necessary in order to win basketball games. And more importantly, as much as the locals loved him because he had the pulse of the people in Memphis, he hadn't accomplished enough to resonate in such a fashion that the organization would have to pay and pay dearly for letting him go. Same would be applicable in New York. What about David Blatt? Other than his resume that he's friends with Steve Mills and the fact that he did coach LeBron James to a finals. Remember, LeBron James was the one that wanted him gone, along with others. I like David Blatt, but come on now, another team, not New York. And that brings us to Mark Jackson. Queens native. Played ball at O'Connell Park in New York. I ain't gonna knock him for living in L.A. Who the hell wouldn't want to live in L.A.? I'm here half the time now. I'm here right now. This sunshine ain't no joke. These palm trees. Sunshine. I don't give a damn about traffic on the 405 when you can go to some of these restaurants with these palm trees and Rodeo Drive right down the block. I'll get over the traffic. This is la-la, baby. Can't knock them for that. But when you're a New Yorker for life, no matter where you live in. And more importantly, when it comes to Mark Jackson, his coaching ability, the fact that he basically laid the foundation that Steve Kerr ultimately piggybacked off of and guided this team to 3 consecutive NBA Finals appearances. This is the same Mark Jackson, by the way, who's a rookie this is a guy that played, O'Connell Park, starred at St. John's as well, ultimately became a first-round pick for the New York Knicks, and then ultimately was Rookie of the Year under Rick Pitino. This is Mark Jackson. And I understand that I know him, and I understand that he's a friend, and I understand that he's a colleague here at ESPN/ABC. I don't care about that. So is Jeff Van Gundy, who would be a great coach for most teams. Phenomenal coach. But let me tell you something right now. When it comes to New York City, do you not understand how disgusted New Yorkers have become? Don't you understand we can't take it anymore? We can't take it. We're sick and tired of it. The losing, the ineptitude, the dysfunctionality, making headlines for all the damn wrong reasons. We're tired of it. We're just tired of it. We can't take it anymore. And more importantly, we can't take somebody spitting in our face figuratively and telling us it's raining. We want to look at somebody and know they telling us the truth. And we don't want it from the players who has to be politically correct because they got their careers to worry about. We don't want it from an executive that's beholden to James Dolan. Steve Mills is going to do the best he can, but he's better off operating in the dark. Him and Scott Perry, they know what they're doing. Let them operate in the dark. But who's going to be in front of those microphones every day? Who's going to be speaking to New Yorkers? Who's going to be galvanizing the troops that live in New York City that are looking for every excuse under the sun to legitimately support the Knicks? Who's going to make you believe? That's Mark Jackson. So step one has been completed. like I told y'all yesterday. And I told y'all 2 weeks earlier than that. And 2 weeks earlier than that. And 2 months earlier than that. I told you that the season was over April 11th and that Jeff Hornacek would be fired by April 12th. It is official now. That's step 1. Step 2 is that by next week, Mark Jackson should be introduced as the next head coach of the New York Knicks. If not, there's a problem. This is what's necessary. It's not just about basketball. It's about New Yorkers. It's about speaking to New Yorkers and supporting New Yorkers and giving them the love back that they give you. You got to have somebody to galvanize the troops. And I'm talking about the fans, Knicks fans, the team, and everybody in between. We need it. As far as I'm concerned, if it ain't Mark Jackson, go get Kenny Smith of TNT. Those are the 2 names that come to my mind because of the state of affairs that exists with this franchise that James Dolan has stewarded over the last couple of decades. 888, say ESPN. That's the number. Call us 888-729-3776. We can talk about that as the show progresses today. Brawl in Boston last night with the Yankees and the Red Sox. Oh, stop it. Players always getting in the fights. It ain't no real fight. When you know that you're only going to get a chance to throw 1 or 2 shots, and then all of a sudden everybody going to be jumping on top of each other. You don't really want to fight. Just stop it. Y'all can make a big deal out of that. Everybody acting like this is what the rivalry needed. All right, fine. Yankees, stop striking out. Win some damn games. Then come talk to me. Another thing I wanted to get into, I just got to take a moment to give credit where credit is due for last night's Denver and Minnesota. What a game. And this kid, Nikolai Jokic, I mean, this kid was special. What a special performance. Now, late, if I'm being totally honest, Taj Gibson got all up in his mug. He was destroying. I mean, he was getting all up in Karl Anthony Towns. I want to say destroying him because Karl Anthony Towns played a hell of a game himself, and the foul trouble certainly didn't help him. But let me tell you something right now. He was giving it to Karl Anthony Towns. He was giving it to him. Karl Anthony Towns finished with 26 and 14. This brother can play. He is special. He is a star in this league. There's no denying it. I love me some Karl Anthony Towns, and I never thought in a million years I would love him like this. I was a Jahlil Okafor guy coming out of college because I said back to the basket, big backside, can play with his back to the basket, can give you 20 or 10 a night if you play him. But that's not just basketball that derailed him. There's other stuff that derailed him, too, that I'm not going to go into. But Karl Anthony Towns was something special, and clearly he was being held back by Coach Cal. No doubt about it. He is special. But I also got to take a moment to give respect to Denver. Denver's an up-and-coming team. They got the big man. I mean, between Burton, Gary Harris should have played a better game last night. I'm a Jamal Murray fan. He's going to be an all-star. He's going to be an all-star. They ran out of gas. And even though Burton hit a big-time 3-point shot in the second half, he wasn't the factor that he was earlier in the game. That was problematic. In the end, what all of this comes down to, ladies and gentlemen, what's undeniable is that we have the most interesting playoffs in the NBA in quite a while. Houston going up against Minnesota. Houston should win that series. But Minnesota, I can see Minnesota winning a game or 2. I can see them making it interesting. They're hard alone in their defense. When they really want to get up in you, I can see them doing something. Andrew Wiggins is going to have to be better from the free throw line. But then again, Houston's so explosive, they could turn around and sweep you. You just never know. It depends on which Houston Rockets team shows up. I didn't get my wish to see Russell Westbrook and Oklahoma City going up against Kevin Durant and Golden State, even though I did get to applaud Russell Westbrook for averaging a triple-double for the second consecutive years, which is just a phenomenal performance. And I don't blame him for getting ticked off at people who try to accuse him of just padding his numbers. This man does not cheat the game. Russell Westbrook shows up on the court every night. Preseason, regular season, exhibition, all-star games, postseason, it don't matter. When he steps on the court against you, he comes to take you out. He's a vicious competitor, but you got to love him for it. Russell Westbrook is special, man. And he's the kind of special that we should applaud as opposed to try and tear down. He ain't perfect. He makes some ill-advised plays from time to time, but he's special. And let's give respect where respect is due. That's something else I wanted to talk about as well, but I like the matchup. And I'm going to ask y'all a very simple question. What's the most interesting matchup to you? Is it Minnesota, Houston? OKC, Utah? Portland, New Orleans? San Antonio, Golden State without Steph Curry? Or is it somebody in the East? Toronto, Washington? Philly, Miami? Cleveland, Indiana? These are the kind of questions you got to ask now. Milwaukee, Boston. Which one? All that and more is a lot to talk about right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. By the way, Minka Fitzpatrick, star at Alabama, two-time All-American, two-time national champion. He'll be on the show with us in a few minutes or so. Looking forward to talking to him. Plus, I got a lot to talk about in regards to these NBA playoffs and the New York Knicks. Looking for a new coach. We all know who I think it should be. We all know.
Craving even more of Stephen A?
Him of all people.
For around-the-clock access to the man?
I'm Stephen A.
You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Stephen A. Smith and on Facebook at Stephen A.
The Seahawks had planned for Colin Kaepernick to work out for them earlier this week. And at the last moment, that trip was postponed because a conversation occurred in which they wanted to know what he was going to be doing on the field this year before and during the national anthem. And I don't think he was willing to give them an answer at that point to commit one way or another. And with that still hanging out there, the Seahawks postponed that trip. Some might say canceled it. Depends on how you look at it. But it's a situation here where Colin Kaepernick was going to come in there and work out, and now he's not.
That was the great Adam Schefter, NFL insider for ESPN, breaking down how Colin Kaepernick was scheduled for a workout with the Seattle Seahawks, but team officials postponed the trip when Colin Kaepernick declined to stop kneeling during the national anthem next season. Okay. Now, see, this is when stuff gets testy because y'all can't take what the truth is. You listen live to the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. Here's the deal. Colin Kaepernick wants to work in the National Football League. He wants a check from somebody else, but wants the freedom to do what he wants to do while getting somebody else's money. I ask a simple question. What workplace do you know tolerates that? See, everybody want to get all emotional. Want to get all emotional and self-righteous and engage in righteous indignation and all of this other stuff without being real. What's the reality? What's the reality? The reality is that when you work for somebody else, they got a right to protect their investment. That is the truth. Let me look at my boss. I'm right here in our LA studios with my man Scott McCarthy. And you got executives at ESPN. Well, you know what? Suddenly I've decided I want to smoke some weed. Well, let me just show up on First Take and smoke some weed. I mean, we can do what we want, right? We don't have any repercussions, any ramifications, right? Doesn't work that way, ladies and gentlemen. It does not work that way. Which brings me to what I teased going into the break. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Bennett goes on the NFL Network the other day, and he talks about how he thinks 90% of the NFL players are using or smoking weed. Talking about how God created weed, whereas some of these medications, these anti-inflammatory medications and other things that these teams put in players' bodies, damage their kidneys and livers and all of this other stuff, and weed is healthier, and, you know, players don't trust that, blah, blah, blah. Fine. Totally understand it. I'm not against Michael Bennett on that. I'm not challenging the veracity, the truth of any statement that Michael Bennett made. What I'm saying is it was dumb for him to say that at this particular moment in time for two reasons above all else. Reason number one, the residue left behind from the impact of the protest by Colin Kaepernick and others, which ultimately ended up with the president feeling the need to comment about it, how, a bunch of them, you should fire those SOBs and all of this other stuff. The residue from that still lingers, which compromises the owner's bottom line. Okay? And not only that, forces the public to look at these players in certain negative lights. Why would you do that? Why would you invite that kind of scrutiny on the players? Because we all know that most of the time they're not busted for using it for medicinal purposes. So why would you do that? A. And B, to me, are more significant, and it's just my opinion. I got mad respect for Michael Bennett. Martellus Bennett as well. And by the way, it was Martellus Bennett that made that comment, not Michael Bennett, so my apologies. But I got mad respect for the brothers. Their community service, their activism, etc. Nothing but love for them. But what I'm saying is, Michael Bennett has been accused of doing physical harm to a paraplegic at Super Bowl 51 in Houston. That case is still pending. I thought it was irresponsible for the local sheriff in Houston to sit up there trying to convict him in the court of public opinion. I said, there's no way in hell that you're going to tell me that, this dude 6'6", 274 pounds is going to target a paraplegic. But we still need to find out everything that happened, obviously, because the accusation is there. But if you're Martellus Bennett and you know that you're synonymous with your brother, that everybody knows y'all, and you're two peas in a pod, when they look at you, they think about him. Just like when they look at him, they think about you. Because you're brothers who are stars in the NFL. So why would you bring that kind of attention to anything at this particular juncture? Again, I'm not challenging the truth of what Martellus Bennett said. I'm challenging the timing. And why does the timing matter? Not just because of your brother's legal issues. And that has nothing to do with weed, and I'm not implying that it does. But you never know what other reach other people will make. Because this is what happens in our society. And then when you combine that with the fact that you're talking about the NFL, and you got guys kneeling, and you're compromising owners' bottom line, and it doesn't matter how right Colin Kaepernick is. I believe he's right. I believe it's perfectly within his right to do it. I believe people are wrong to distance themselves from the NFL product and the NFL brand because of the position that Colin Kaepernick has taken. I will defend Colin Kaepernick to the hilt. But that does not mean that you ignore the impact of those protests he provoked by initiating it. And go about the business of bloviating about weed use in the NFL. Knowing that your patrons out there, your audience out there is already turned off by some of y'all. Why give more ammunition and fuel to the fire? Now, there are people out there, Stephen A., man, you selling out, dog. I mean, what? You should be able to do what you want. Oh, shut up! You ain't paying his bills. Everybody want to talk about expressing themselves and sticking out their chest and being emotional for 15 seconds. I'm talking about the man being successful. Colin Kaepernick's making a choice. That's a sacrifice he's willing to make. He knows good and damn well he's going to be ostracized for taking that position. He clearly does not care. More power to the brother. I wish him well. But a lot of us out here ain't in a position to afford to take the chances and make the sacrifices that he's making. What about them? What about them? Just like I told my man Max today, you know what? He's white. He's Jewish. He's very liberal and progressive. He speaks adamantly about systemic racism and an insidious impact that it's had on our society. I get all of that. And he talks about the truth is the truth is the truth. I got that. But even when it came to Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat on the bus, do some of your history. Study some of your history. They could have got plenty of people to do certain things during the civil rights movement. They handpicked her to take that position because she would resonate. Let us not forget that. It's not just about sacrifice. It's about having a plan and making sure that that plan has an end game. Not just expressing yourself because you're in an emotional moment with no plan of action whatsoever. That's what we're talking about here. That's reality. Colin Kaepernick didn't have a plan. Martellus Bennett didn't have a plan when he showed up on NFL Network talking about we use 90% of the NFL players. NBA players always seem to have a plan. That's why they make their positions known while not compromising their money. Maybe the NFL could learn something from that. Maybe Colin Kaepernick could learn something from that. After all, why wouldn't you tell him you're not going to kneel anymore? Hasn't your goal already been accomplished? Or do you just enjoy being martyred?
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.